Hello and welcome to episode 262 of the Smash Accept podcast. I'm your host, Michael Royer. You can find me on Twitter at DynastyDadFF. We got a great show planned for you tonight. There's been so many big-time injuries this particular week. None bigger than Rashee Rice. We were super high on him. We moved him all the way up to wide receiver 11 in Dynasty. Now we have this big-time injury we got to discuss. Nobody better to talk about injuries. Nobody better to chop it up with than my main man, Snoog. How you doing today, brother?
Dad, any week that I wake up and see Alvin Kamara as the RB1 overall, I'm excited. You don't get better vibes from Snoog than that. And I mean, he has been the best running back in football for fantasy football through the first 4 weeks. And I'm excited. That's all I care about right now. All my teams are dominating because I have Kamara in every single league. Everybody that we were telling you guys to buy, Derrick Henry, Alvin Kamara, James Conner, Kenneth Walker, Ache, and all these guys we've been pounding the drum for all offseason in Dynasty, especially because they were such cheap values, especially the vets, are paying off. So if you listened, you're probably in first place right now.
Yeah, and that's the nice part about Dynasty. Most of our teams are set up that way. And today, it's you're going to go through some mishaps. We've talked about putting ourselves in the right position, but buying Rashee Rice was the right call. It's just a matter of what do we do now? You know what I mean? And there's a delay here. Everybody saw the game. Patrick Mahomes threw an interception, hit him in the knee. It looks like an ACL. Looking at a lot of the sports medicine guys on Twitter, this delay could mean good news or bad news. Normally you get that right off the bat. Best case scenario, we're looking at a bone bruise, which would put him out 2 to 4 weeks. Worst case scenario, and what everybody really truly believes that it is a torn ACL. Now, we talked about Rashee Rice at the time of the injury. We're not going to count week 4 because he didn't have any receptions or anything like that. But he was the wide receiver 3. We moved him up in Dynasty. We were talking all offseason. Man, you got to buy Rashee Rice. This is not going to be – the suspension is going to wait until December, right? And then we're like, okay, look at him balling out. He is the clear-cut wide receiver 1 in Kansas City. And he was out there getting peppered. 12, 14 targets, just – absolutely looking like vintage Michael Thomas, the type of wide receiver you want to build around. You know what I mean? That perfect guy that was your complimentary wide receiver 2 that you didn't have to pay wide receiver 1 prices. Now, Snoog, we're like, oh, shoot, man. If this is the real deal, if he has an ACL tear, we're looking at an ACL tear. And then, which would be fine in a normal scenario because that would put him back at training camp next year. But then you have to tack on, okay, December 8th, he's going to be in court, and we're looking at a suspension. I was okay paying the 103, 104, knowing that I was going to have Rashee Rice balling out as the top 5 wide receiver the rest of the season. Now you're losing Rashee Rice potentially for the rest of the season, and then 4 to 6 games next year. That changes everything. That literally goes from, okay, this is a normal injury to this is a major concern right now. Mute. You're on mute.
Bear with me here. I'm battling a cold, so if I sound like a goose, I'm pushing through for you guys. But yeah, Rashee Rice, I mean, it's so tough because it's one of those things where I'm almost so tempted to gamble on him, just hoping it's the bone bruise because you could end up making out like a bandit. But this is a guy that went from being probably outside the top 20 Dynasty wide receivers into the top 10 through the first 3-4 weeks.
Yeah.
And now he has this devastating injury, and now it's like people are contending, they're panic selling. This is your biggest buying opportunity, but don't pay too much. I've seen a first and a second. I've seen a first. I've seen 3 seconds. I've seen things like that. I've saw Devontae Adams in a second. Those are the type of deals that you kind of want to make where there's very little risk involved, and you're just chasing straight upside and banking on the medicine and sports technology nowadays with how ACLs and how injuries have been healing. This is a guy that he does rely on his explosiveness, but he wins underneath. He wins in the slant routes, digs, deep out routes, stuff like that. He's just a yak machine. So I think that it's time to buy and take chances because we did it already when he was supposed to be suspended for 8 weeks, and now he still has that suspension looming, and now he's injured. So now it's going to get interesting.
Our guy Pete Nova said, yo, what's up, fellas? Love that guy's work. Make sure you guys are following him on Twitter. So here's the deal is I'm in 20 leagues, Snoog. How many of them you think I made a Rashee Rice offer one way or another?
20.
All 20. Because I'm like, I'm always there. That's what I do, man. It's like when panic ensues, I jump in. So I'm making offers. And the first deal that I got done, and I think you're gonna love this one, was I did two that were very similar. So you got to look at the next man up, right? And now Travis Kelce's stock, I think, bounces back. With what we saw the rest of the game, Travis Kelce became Rashee Rice again. Travis Kelce went back to who he was as that guy that dominates across the middle because that was what was necessary. And now I think Travis Kelce moves back to a top 3 tight end rest of season. So, I mean, the first deal that I got done, I got James Cook and Travis Kelce for Rashee Rice on a contender. Another deal that I made when I was looking at things is the other guy that's the clear beneficiary in Kansas City is Xavier Worthy. You and I were very huge on Xavier Worthy. I got 2 deals done for Xavier Worthy. One was Xavier Worthy and Jordan Mason for Rashee Rice on a contender. And the other one was I got Xavier Worthy and a second for Rashee Rice on a contender. What you have to look at in that particular situation is Rashee Rice's value is going to skyrocket. He is going to be the guy. He's going to go over 1,000 yards. He's going to be that KC guy. And everybody pays attention to what have you done for me lately. So if you get Jordan Mason and Rashee Rice, Jordan Mason and Xavier Worthy, you get an RB1 with the Christian McCaffrey news, and then you get Xavier Worthy, who I think will be a top 20 wide receiver rest of the way. And now that stock's going to go up. I think Rashee Rice now, the stock is going to do nothing but go down if he truly does have that ACL tear. So your buy window could drop quite a bit, but your sell window is probably pretty close to the top it's going to be if you're a true contender. And that's what the side I want to handle here first, Snoog, is true contenders. First trade, let's talk about it. James Cook in a 0.25 PPC, Travis Kelce in 0.75. It's not sexy on paper, but it gives you 2 instant guys that are going to go out there and it fills 2 holes. I'm playing bully tight end. Now I'll have Kincaid, Bowers, and Kelce. There are no other tight ends to own, other than Kittle.
Yeah, I like that move. I think that, you're getting a guy in James Cook that's been skyrocketing up rankings. He's the Buffalo Bills RB1, clearly. He's got receiving upside, touchdown upside from a week-per-week perspective. And then we got Travis Kelce. He had his best game of the season last week. He was looking more like vintage Kelce. Put up, I think, 80, 90-plus yards. He had the biggest, I think it was 40-plus yard catch downfield. Yeah. He wins exactly how Rashee Rice wins. He doesn't win with the explosiveness, though. But he wins in that underneath, sitting in the zone, getting the one-on-one mismatches.
It looked like he was sitting back for Rashee, and then all of a sudden, boom, that switch came back in, and that dog came back, and Travis Kelce came back in. So, I love that one. What I'm really trying to do is, if you're contending, you got to make these moves. Andrew Durrett sent me one. He's like, I got Garrett Wilson for Rashee Rice in a second. That's my favorite thing to do right now, is to take your future 25 or 26 second. And I've been doing it with guys in the Patreon. I'm sorry. I had at least 60 DMs say, what do I do with Rashee Rice? I got to help the guys in the Patreon first. No better time to be in the Patreon when this kind of stuff happens, because I got to help you guys first. And we got deals done where it was Rashee Rice in a second for A.J. Brown, Rashee Rice in a second for Garrett Wilson, Rashee Rice and a second for Jaden Reed. I saw one where it was Olave in a third for Rashee in a second. These are the type of moves that you got to make. You got to use that future capital. And what I like doing is taking those future seconds, because right now, those are pieces that I'm comfortable moving. I have no problem doing that, where I can give Rashee Rice and a second and stay relevant, because A.J. Brown, Garrett Wilson, Jaden Reed, Drake London, Devonta Smith, even Brian Thomas Jr. I've moved him into that same tier. I'm like, these guys, if I can add a second, stay relevant, stay young. That's the biggest challenge for me, Snoog, is most people are going to say, you know what, I'll get Stephon Diggs in a second. Rashee Rice is still only going to be 25 years old. He's 24 now. He'll be 25 next year. I want to make sure it's a London, a Olave, a Smith, a Thomas, and a Dunze, even a DJ Moore. Look at that sexy jersey over there. We're going to give that away by the end of the show tonight. I know. I already know who won. I'm so excited to announce it. We're doing that YouTube giveaway where if you guys subscribe, we're going to do that. We're going to do it again in October or November too. But that's about the line for me. Xavier Worthy, because it's the same situation. Other guys are saying, what about Debo? What about Godwin? What about, I got to get something bigger there. But let's start out with this second rounder. So we're adding second rounders and we're getting Garrett Wilson, who's, a guy that we're buying. We're getting Jaden Reed. I put it there. I did one where I traded Rice straight up for Jaden Reed because Jaden Reed, before last week, before Love came back, was my wide receiver 20. I moved him all the way up to wide receiver 12 in Dynasty. I mean, he's just been so good.
Yeah, I don't blame you for that. I mean, he's literally Deebo Samuel light in an elite offense. He's getting all the manufactured touches, and he's winning downfield. One thing that we always highlighted before the season was, although I was super high on Dontavian Wicks, and it is Dontavian Wicks' season, he's better than Christian Watson, he's better than Romeo Doubs. Jaden Reed was always his own in this offense. He had his own role. He was always separate from those three, and that's what makes him special. Winning after the catch, winning in the backfield with his rushes, manufactured touches, good route runner.
We were a little light.
He's a dynamic player in the hands of a good offensive coordinator with an elite quarterback. He is going to produce at a high level. He's currently the wide receiver 4. He's had 130-plus receiving yards in 2 games playing with Jordan Love this year. Mm-hmm. He is absolutely elite, man.
So let's talk about this. We're going to stick with Rice here for a little bit. We talked about guys the second. I'm going to play a little smash or pass, okay? We talked about it from the contending side, right? The contending side is easy. We got to go out. Oh, man, speaking of contending, my man Lobo, absolutely love this guy on Twitter. He said, "What's up, Stud Muffins? You guys got to follow him for sure. Awesome guy. Love when you guys, now that we're doing this at nighttime instead of like the morning like we always do, Snoog, they're just coming out. I love it. But what I really got to talk about is who are you doing even up, right? Like, so if you're rebuilding, you should 100% be making an offer for Rashee Rice. You know what I mean? Right now, let's say we're going 1 for 1. You're contending, I'm rebuilding, and I offer you Rome Odunze. Who are you taking?
I'm taking Rashee Rice. And that's close, though.
Brian Thomas Jr.?
I'm taking BT over Rome.
I am too. That man was wide open all day. If Trevor Lawrence was able to get him the ball properly, last game would have been 200-plus yards. You know what I mean?
I feel damned because I wanted BTJ to be a Jag all offseason. I talked about how good that would be for Trevor Lawrence, and it just hasn't worked out. Trevor Lawrence stinks.
Straight up for DK Metcalf, if you're a contender.
I'm actually super high on DK Metcalf. I love what Grubb and McDonald they're doing for the Seahawks passing offense.
I love
unlocking Geno, throwing the ball downfield, targeting DK as that alpha. I think DK's a guy that I would take over Rice at this point. But you're also gambling if it's a bone bruise or if it's something like that. It's like you're going to eat a little bit of value, but don't risk it. If you're a contender, they're pretty equal. I mean, maybe you're off by a late first and a second swap. Sometimes you got to bite the bullet. People don't understand that. You got to bite the bullet and eat a little bit of value to contend sometimes. Not every team is going to be dodging these injuries. Mm-hmm. Like, I've had teams that have had 4 injuries. It's next man up. That's how you got to play.
Yeah, for sure. Yo, my man Carlos, that's Los Talks Pats on X, said, recently found you guys' page, and I'm obsessed with your analysis. Keep it up. Love that support, buddy. The next 3 guys, I'm not doing it. DJ Moore, Brandon Ayuk, Waddle, Flowers. I'm not doing it. It's got to be Rashee Rice. I need a
That's
plus on these guys.
That's a disappointing tier right there.
Yeah. What I'm interested in doing down below, and I made a trade earlier this week. I got Diggs in a second for Ladd in a third. If you are going, if you have, thank you. I was loving that one. But if you have Rashee Rice, right? You likely have an alpha wide receiver because you probably bought him on the cheap or drafted him in rookie drafts. So you probably have opportunities there. Snoog, if I come to you and I'm saying, you know what? Let's do Rashee Rice for Stephon Diggs in a first. Would you take that trade? And where does that first have to be?
It's so funny because I think I'm the only one that's super high on Stephon Diggs.
I am now.
I am taking that 10 times out of 10.
Mike Evans.
You're getting top 15 production and a first. Yes, I'm taking Mike Evans too.
And
that's a deal where I'm like, okay, I'm still getting the contender points. I'm still getting top 20, top 15 production. Mm-hmm. And I'm getting a first. I'm getting a guy that has a damn good chance at being better than Rashee Rice was. Yeah. Right? You're getting a mid to late or even an early first, a re-roll on a draft class. And if it's like this past draft class, that could be a BTJ. That could be a Rome Odunze, that could be a Brock Bowers, even if it's in the mid to late range. So that's why never underestimate first. They're liquid assets, and when injuries like this happen, you have the buying power to go out there and get Rashee Rice on the low. A
And
lot of
that's
people trade away all their picks before the season starts, and then they don't have buying power.
and we have this opportunity now where you get that insulation and you buy Stephon Diggs plus that first, and Diggs gets hurt. You can still use that first to buy Deebo Samuel for the stretch run. You still have that first to buy a Mike Evans for that stretch run. You know what I mean? Like getting that first now, I'm perfectly on. Mason just said I'm 3-1 and have Amon-Ra, Rashee, Olave, and Cup. Are we trading Rashee? And I think you are. If you're 3-1 or you're 4-0, I think you have to at least kick the tires. You have to try to see what you're going to do. You can, look at the other teams in the league. We're going to do a show here after this one's over, just talking about our quarterly report, trying to look at what teams make the most sense. And Snoog, when I'm doing this on these Rashee Rice teams, I went through and I said, you know what? I'm in 20 leagues. Let's go see which ones Rashee Rice is on that are 3-0 or 4-1, or 3-1 or 4-0. It was 90% of them. Like they all have Rashee Rice and Jordan Mason if you look at them. But I'm looking at those teams and I'm like, all right, what do I have on this team that can set them up? You know what I mean? That I could get myself some insulation the opposite way, where I can try to go and say, you know what? I'm going to give him Michael Pittman in a first because Michael Pittman finally had a good game because Anthony Richardson was out. Like I'm going to go give him I may even start with Pittman in a second. Those guys that are a real crotch stain on my roster that I don't want anything to do with. Like Jordan Addison had a good week. We've been talking about selling him. Now's your opportunity. You had an opportunity there. Xavier Legette has a big game. Now we could just take Xavier Legette in a second and try to get up to Rashee Rice. Some people are panic selling. So don't go out there and offer trash. Don't offer them, a Ricky Purcell in a third. But go out there and make some offers. See what you can do because you're going to be shocked. There are teams where you're going to be able to give up Deontay Johnson and Josh Downs and get Rashee Rice. And then you're going to have an elite level wide receiver because Snoog, when he comes back, and he will come back, he's going to, even if it's the ACL and the suspension, he will be back. Dynasty's a long game, and he will be a wide receiver one, because the Chiefs are not going to go out and draft another wide receiver if they have Rashee Rice, Xavier Worthy. I don't think they draft another guy with substantial draft capital. So, that puts themselves in a good position. I'm going to pull up a couple of trades here. But before I do that, anything else you want to add into that? You know what I mean? Like, would you be trying to tier up to the studs? I'm not going that route. I'm not trying to add to Rashee to get all the way up to Chase and Jefferson and those guys because I just don't see it happening. You might be able to go to the guy that's completely rebuilding and offer Rashee Rice in a first for Malik Neighbors, and that would get me instantly hard at this time of night. You know what I mean? Like if I could go up to Neighbors,
pants off type of trade.
Yeah. Like I might look at that one for days. You know what I mean?
I think you go to the Nico Collins, AJ Brown, even Garrett Wilson owner and see what that looks like if you're gonna tier up. But I also think what is Xavier Worthy gonna be in this offense? Because his last year at Texas, and he was used as a dynamic yak guy. He was one of the best yak guys per attempt in this class, a very elite class at Texas. He was one of the best true freshman performers ever. I want to see what he looks like now. Maybe he sprinkles a little bit of his game and what he can do in the yak area and takes on a little bit of that Rice role. He's a smaller guy. He doesn't have that 6'1", 200-pound frame like Rice, but he's explosive. And if he's the type of guy that if the Chiefs scheme it right, he can house 90-yard slants. Like that's the type. He's like that Jameson Williams type guy. I would love to see how Andy Reid and that offense with Patrick Mahomes can get creative and use Xavier Worthy in that aspect of the game because he was used like that at Texas. His ADOT, his targets behind the line of scrimmage, I think he saw 50% of them in his last year at Texas. There's no reason why they've been using him in that gadget role a little bit and downfield. Let's see him take on a little bit of Rice's role with Kelsey and see what he can do.
There is a non-zero chance that Xavier Worthy's worth more than Rashee Rice by this time next year. That's why we didn't really talk about it, but those offers where I got Jordan Mason and Worthy and Worthy in a second, I feel like those are wins. I feel like that's a low-key way to replace in the same offense. I know Patrick Mahomes hasn't put up elite level numbers, but I think that's a good way to go. A couple other trades. We got so many of them in the Patreon. My man, Ace Cesiri 23. Sam Darnold and Terry McLaurin for Rashee Rice.
That's
smash.
you
Sam
taking
Darnold is no, I'm taking Rashee Rice all day.
Oh,
You taking
yeah,
Terry?
me too.
Yeah,
No,
because
no.
Darnold's is the
Terry's
I
just a
know,
gross player
He's-
to own. I don't want any Terry.
and Darnold's been so good, but he's just a means to an end. He's a guy that you use to tear up. You know what I mean? He's a guy that you make a trade like I did earlier, where I gave up Darnold and Devonta Smith for Brian Thomas Jr. in a first. And Brian Thomas Jr., I have one spot below Devonta right now, which means I sold Sam Darnold for a first. You know what I mean? You got to do those kind of moves. Histine 1017. Now this one's real interesting because he's almost taken three guys struggling and trying to flip them. I want to see what your thought process is here. Kyler Murray, Chris Olave, Tank Dell in a first, or Mahomes, Waddle, and Rashee Rice.
Kyler Murray, Chris Olave, Tank Dell in a first, or Patrick Mahomes, Jalen Waddle, Rashee Rice. So I'm taking Kyler in the first over Mahomes. That's a side. That side wins. Then I'm taking, so then it's Chris Olave and Tank Dell for Rashee Rice.
Waddle and Rice.
Waddle, Rice. I'm taking the Kyler Murray side.
I told him it's not quite enough yet. I want a second on top. Here's
Second,
the deal with
we'll get it done. Yeah.
Here's
Second
the deal
will
with
make me happy.
Miami, because we're talking about an injury show. Tua Tagovailoa has been cleared to come back for Week 8. If Tua comes back in Week 8, I saw it on a
Buy
report today.
Tyreek Hill right now, everybody.
Thank you.
Tyreek Hill.
Thank you.
Buy him.
Now I'm not buying
He's
Waddle.
going to be
but
the
you can
real
buy
league
A-Chain.
winner.
I actually made an offer today to get Tyreek in a second for Rashee Rice, because I'm like, you know what? I'm a contender. Who's better than Tyreek Hill when Tua's up there? It's only a handful of guys. It's Jefferson, it's Lamb, and that's it. So if I can go out there and get Tyreek, I'm gonna do it. And I think that's another play out there. We're gonna talk about some Anthony Richardson soon, but I got another trade here. This is actually one of mine. I want to get your opinion on this one out there. It's Mason Reed and Metcalf for Rice, Kincaid in the first.
A good one too.
It's at least something that keeps you relevant, right? Like it's that interesting spot. I saw, like we talked about before, Garrett Wilson in a second for Rashee Rice.
If I have Rashee Rice, I'm not selling him until I know what the injury is, because everybody already expects it to be a torn ACL. So at best, or at worst, you're getting a torn ACL's value. At best, if you hold and he has the bone bruise or he has a sprained MCL or a hyperextended knee or something like that, you're getting way more value just because there's no torn ACL and there's a chance he comes back. I'm taking Rashee all day.
Tequila operator, my man, said Rice or down Shaheed in a second. I feel like that's just 3 seconds for a first. I'm not doing it. I got another one here, Shaheed and Tank Dell for Rashee Rice. I'm still not doing that. These are not the deals that I'm trying to really actively go out there and get. And that one was from Dynasty Drama Pod. I got another one here that I think is really interesting. Flubba Jubba said Rashee Rice in a first, or Brian Thomas Jr., Khalil Shakir in a second. I think that one's interesting.
Yeah.
And then the monster of all deals, okay? My man from the Patreon, JB. That's Josh says to me, he goes, "Hey, guy wants to sell me Rashee Rice. He wants T. Higgins and a 20 and 220 or 25 and a 26 first. Should I take it?" I said, "That's way too much, brother. Just sit back." And sometimes, Snoog, you win your dynasty leagues by the trade you don't make, right? And he was like, "Oh, I'm going to make that trade." And I'm like, "No, don't do it, Josh. Don't do it. Like, sit back, relax. If you give up 2 years worth of first on top of T. Higgins for Rashee Rice, you're going to regret it." He doesn't take it. T. Higgins plays a really good week 4. Looks like he's back, and Rashee goes down. And, sometimes it's those deals you don't make that end up winning you your league, and it's like now he's got that opportunity where he can play around with some other assets to go out there. So I think we covered the Rashee Rice enough. I think we gave you guys a ton of different opportunities. If I come to you today and I'm buying Rashee Rice, what is the pick in 2025? I think it's 107.
I think it's a little bit higher.
You think it's a little bit? I had it at 103 before the injury.
Probably 105.
It's only if it's an ACL, it's only going to fall. You know what I mean? Like if it's an ACL, you'll be able to buy him for a late first when somebody's on that stretch run.
So
a lot of people are
play
like
201, 202.
So if you have Rashee Rice, don't trade him until you know it's an ACL because it's not going to dip that much further. But if you do have him, we gave you a bunch of different opportunities. Now I want to talk about an injury and a guy that's really been beyond frustrating is Anthony Richardson. Anthony Richardson, week 1, goes out, puts up 30-plus fantasy points just like he did last year. And, man, this offense looks horrendous with Anthony Richardson. So there's a lot of guys that are reaching out like, what? Dude. They're like, what do I do with him? You know, and it's like, I mean, I think fantasy-wise, this hip pointer that he has is really bad news because it's going to hamper his running. I mean, the Colts got to be absolutely idiotic. They just, they bring him back in, right, after he gets injured his hip, and they're like, you know what, first play back, why don't you run it again at the goal line? Let's get you hit again. And it's like Anthony Richardson right now is not a sell. He just can't be because you're not going to get anything. But he has to be at least a buy or a hold until he comes out and pops off. One trade that I saw here that I kind of liked, the guy is rebuilding. He got J.J. McCarthy, Travis Kelce in a second for Anthony Richardson. I know, like, if we were talking about this trade in August, you'd throw up in your mouth. But at this point, I think it's a good trade. Like, I think I'm taking McCarthy, Kelce in a second. Other ones I'm seeing, a guy gave up Purdy in a late first. I'd take the Purdy side all day now. You know, in August, it was Purdy plus 1.5 to 2 firsts. So what are you doing with Richardson? I mean, there was a spot where we were almost saying Richardson is right on that same wavelength as where Stroud was going to be. Now you got to move him clearly outside.
I wasn't saying that. Don't drive me into that.
You also said Jaden Daniels wasn't good, all right? So we're going to come back to that later. Jaden Daniels. You and I argued Xavier Worthy versus Jaden Daniels all offseason, and guess what? We were both right. Because you couldn't go wrong with the 103. You just couldn't. Like, if you have a
you mean Malik Neighbors?
Oh, what did I say?
Xavier Worthy.
Yo, see, here's the problem, all right? This is a late night pod. We normally do this. We were talking about Malik Neighbors versus Jaden Daniels.
Jaden Daniels over Drake May. It's Jaden Daniels over Drake May. But if Drake May was a Viking, it's Drake May.
I love it. All right. So if you're dealing for Anthony Richardson right now, I mean, you have to say, Caleb's past him. Jordan Love, I'm moving way up. I'm moving Love above Caleb Williams now, even at this point. Yep. I moved Jaden Daniels all the way up to QB8. You could argue as high as QB5, QB6.
He's my 7, I think, right now.
I got him at 8, but I think I should have him over Burrow. So
I need to see more from him.
So right now, these are trades you can make, and I want to just Anthony Richardson or Dak Prescott.
Dak.
I can't do it yet. I want to, right? Justin Herbert.
Richardson. Herbert's literally not startable.
Brock Purdy. So the interesting thing is the top 10 have just separated themselves in Superflex completely from everything else, right? Because after that list, you're talking about Trevor Lawrence, Drake May, Jared Goff, Justin Fields, who I think really belongs higher up than where he is if he has 2 or 3 more good starts. But I mean, Deshaun Watson, Baker Mayfield, it's like you almost want to just go elite or jump down and buy yourself Baker Mayfield on the cheap, buy Sam Darnold on the cheap, buy Tua. But Anthony Richardson right now, everybody's saying, what do I do with him? So if I could give Anthony Richardson and a first to get to Kyler Murray, what do you do? If it's a late first, because Kyler struggled as well. You know, like this is the interesting part because you're not going to get to Lamar, Jalen, or Patrick. Josh Allen's in a tier by himself. Kyler Murray, Burrow. Would you give a late first to get to Jaden Daniels?
No.
Early second.
Probably.
Okay. So
there's a fine line with these type of quarterbacks, right? With these rushing QBs, if they're just absolutely trash and can't throw the football and can't put together drives, the rushing upside don't matter no more because they ain't gonna have a job. That's like where people don't know how to draw the line. Justin Fields, people couldn't draw the line. Like people have
Justin
to be able
Fields is the QB5 right now. Like
he is. He's playing good now. He's on a new system, but that's the thing. He almost didn't get a job. A team almost didn't want him. So that's what I'm saying. It's like you got to look for that.
Jaden's got that passing. he is breaking records of how
Yeah,
accurate he's been.
I think Jaden's on a different level as a passer than guys like Richardson and stuff. But Richardson's just not accurate. But he has a crazy arm. But I would definitely do Richardson a second for Daniels. I think Richardson's a better rusher than Daniels, and he's a better athlete. And he's a ridiculously strong-armed quarterback. But between the eyes and his accuracy and his touch on the football isn't on Jaden Daniels' level. He's 2-3 years younger, but he's just not on his level.
Let's pull up some Anthony Richardson trades and let's play with them. Let's see what happens. Joe Burrow in a second or Anthony Richardson in a first?
Burrow in a second.
Agreed. Daniels and Kirk or Richardson? That can't be right. Pierce. That don't make sense. That can't make sense. Let's call that DJ Moore instead. Anthony Richardson and DJ Moore or Jaden Daniels and Kirk? I feel like that's the kind of move that you have to make to get creative. You have to entice them with DJ Moore.
That's probably
to kind of tear it off
for market value.
Anthony Richardson in a third or Dak Prescott?
Dak.
Oh, here's one. Kittle, Stafford, Kupp, and Ridley or Richardson in a late first?
Richardson.
Yeah, I feel like that's where that's got to be too. So it's like I'm not hitting. Oh, here's Purdy and Darnold for Richardson and Rice. Man, that Richardson side just dominated. Like someone just threw up and they're just like, hey, let's go this route. I'm low key buying Anthony Richardson right now, but I'm not doing it aggressively. I have 3 shares. 2 of them were from startups this past year. Feels a lot like Justin Fields when I did that last year in that same kind of area. I want to just say be patient, okay? Because I'm seeing people in redraft. They're like, should I drop Anthony Richardson for Kirk Cousins? I'm like, why? Like, even when Anthony Richardson sucks, he's putting up Kirk Cousins numbers with his legs. So it's like, I think we're going to be back to an area where if you're rebuilding, now is the time that you go out there and you make an offer for Anthony Richardson and you try to scale up to get to Anthony Richardson, because I feel like tearing down, there's not much there. I mean, I think you could get Fields in a first for him, and I think there's a real world scenario where those two flip flop values by the end of the year. I think if you go out there and you offer Baker in a second, I think you can get Anthony Richardson. Like, no lie. Like, some teams are really, really bothered by what's happened there. I mean, I think Darnold in a first, I would do that. Jared Goff in a second, I think I would take a shot on that if I'm not contending. So there's some money to be had with Anthony Richardson, because even at this stage, Snoog, we've seen 8 starts and 4 of them have been top 5. The other 4 have been puke. Like, they've been really bad. But those other 4 have been top 5. So it's like, if you have Josh Allen as your QB1, Anthony Richardson can win you leagues by what he puts up in a week-to-week basis. So that's an interesting
Especially
one.
In 4-point passing, he can too.
Yeah. I want to talk. The next guy that we got to cover is Christian McCaffrey. So Christian McCaffrey now goes. We see the thing. He goes to Germany. Now we're talking about tendonitis. We're talking some serious. Like both knees are having issues. Both calves are having issues. What are you doing with Christian McCaffrey? Because the only thing I can say is I was telling everybody to buy Jordan Mason in the offseason for seconds. I own him everywhere. Every single team I own Jordan Mason in, I'm in first place because he's putting up 25 to 30 fantasy points if you're in PPC. So what are you doing with Christian McCaffrey? I have 1 share. He's sitting on my IR, but I'm 4-0. I beat Zoltan this week. Remember, I was like, yo, I got to stay patient and not trade. I'm going to start Jawan Jennings, and then he puts up like 40 points. So what are you doing with Christian McCaffrey? Everyone's asking, and it's like, you can't sell, can you? Like the trades, what are you going to get?
Yeah, hold them. I officially have Alvin Kamara over Christian McCaffrey in my Dynasty rankings.
Woo!
I officially made that transition. I just fear that Alvin Kamara is going to have better longevity. He's just going to be better for longer, way less of an injury curve. The Achilles tendonitis is no joke, and he has it in both his legs. Kamara is the closest thing we've ever seen to a Christian McCaffrey type player. Yeah. And Christian McCaffrey is obviously better, but I don't play games with that.
Let's talk some 1-for-1 now, right? These trades were not anything you'd even fathom 6 months ago, but Kyron Williams or Christian McCaffrey?
McCaffrey.
Kenneth Walker.
Kenneth Walker. I put him over McCaffrey too.
James Cook.
McCaffrey.
See, but you have, I mean,
James
to me,
Cook and Kyron Williams, I just refuse to believe they're good players.
I understand it.
They put up points, but
Derrick Henry.
If I can get Derrick Henry in a second for McCaffrey, I'd take it.
Okay. All right. And that's kind of where I'm at. And I'm like, but I'm not really interested in the rest of these guys in this area. I mean, Jonathan Brooks, Ramondre Stevenson. But then when you talk about Alvin Kamara, Joe Mixon, David Montgomery, I think you could still get like Jordan Mason plus a late first. Like those are the kind of moves, maybe even a Bucky Irving plus a first, James Conner in a first, Aaron Jones in a first, J.K. Dobbins. Those are deals that I'll take because I would like to get him off my teams. You know what I mean? Especially if you have been holding on to him, you just need to do it. You need to ride it out, especially if you're a rebuilding team. Just hold him because he's actually helping you out by scoring 0 points. When the time comes, you got to flip him. As soon as he's back, Snoog. I'm not waiting a week. If he says he's playing, you better believe I'm selling him. And if I need to, I'll add a second. We talked about it with Rashee Rice. I'll add a second to Christian McCaffrey to get to Saquon or A-Chain. You're not going to get to Gibbs, Hall, or Robinson at this point, but I would do that. I would trade straight up for Jonathan Taylor. I think you and I are some of the last believers in Travis Etienne, but I mean, if you give me Etienne in a second, I'd consider it. You know what I mean? Like, I think that's where we're at here. So it's a matter of just trying to continue on your quarterly report to buy assets that are not going to put up points. But Christian McCaffrey is a very volatile piece.
He's either a hold or you try to tear up, in my opinion.
100%. The other guy that's in that area right now, and I want to talk to you a little bit about Puka Nacua, because I was starting to come around and say, you know what? I think I'm buying Puka. I think I'm going to buy Puka in Dynasty. And then I'm listening more and more. I keep diving into what our fantasy doctors are saying. And this is a PCL injury, which they're saying that's the type of injury where we're talking about knee stabilization. We're talking about him coming back. And they're thinking, maybe week 10 is what I heard today from Jesse Morse, where he's saying week 10 and he doesn't think he'll be back to 100% until 2025. For me, that makes it time right now to add a second to get to A.J. Brown, Garrett Wilson, add a late first to get to Nico Collins and get something thrown back. If I'm, rebuilding, then I'm going to get Rashee Rice plus. If I'm contending, I would even take Reed in a second. I'd take London in a second. London low-key has gone up every single week in targets. So talk to me a little bit about Puka Nacua, because this is bothersome to me a little bit. I was like, okay, he's going to come back week 6, week 7, and I think he's just going to come back and instantly do this. But that knee injury was a re-injury to the PCL, which stabilizes the knee, which is just huge.
Yeah, it's not looking good for him right now with the injury and just the situation of coming back and playing at a high level, fresh off that injury. I think your best bet is tearing up or tearing back far enough where you're getting a Chris Godwin, you're getting a Stephon Diggs and 2 firsts. Where you're getting a Chris Godwin.
I think you can get 2 still.
I think you could get Diggs and 2 firsts, a 25 and like a 27.
Okay.
For Puka in a second or something like that.
Yeah.
Or same thing for like a Devontae Adams or Mike Evans. I think you could get 2 firsts on top if you give something back of value, like a second, a Rashid Shaheed, someone that's substance. There is the type of move that you're trying to do if you're a contender, is just taking a big jump back and getting that capital. Or some options is tearing up, buying Garrett Wilson, someone that's underperforming, that's a high-level player. Buying A.J. Brown, someone that's also injured, that you could probably get pretty close to damn straight up for, if not a second, 3, and a third swap.
I denied an A.J. Brown for Rashee Rice trade 6 days ago.
What we're really trying to do is buy Matthew Stafford before this Rams offense gets healthy again, because he's been atrocious without Cupper.
Been real bad.
Without Cupper and Puka. And Cup's supposed to be back by week 6, week 7. Puka back by week 10. If you just get 3 to 4 to 5 legacy games out of Stafford in the latter half of the year during that playoff stretch, it's a banger move. You could probably get him for like a 27 second right now, especially in 6-point passing leagues. I'd be trying to do that.
Yeah, and I think, there's such a big advantage to buying injured players, to taking those risks. I think we talked about Rice, we talked about Puka, we talked about Christian McCaffrey, we talked about Richardson. The other one still got to think about is you are going to get JJ McCarthy for pennies on the dollar. And if you think that Sam Darnold, unless he wins MVP and just rolls into the sunset here, JJ McCarthy is going to be at least fighting for that starting job next year. I bought a couple shares this week for 25 seconds, and I don't really understand. I throw in a Gardner Minshew. You know what I mean? Like people, you get into bye weeks and people are like, oh crap, I can't lose this week. And you throw them a Andy Dalton in a second and you get JJ McCarthy. It's how easy Dynasty can be. Make sure you guys sign up for the Discord Patreon right now. Honestly, $5 a month. You can't beat it. I talked to Josh, JB there, where he didn't trade Rashee Rice and got 2 firsts. And I'm like, dude, for 15 cents a day, you just saved your entire season for 1 month. You know what I mean? Like, you're set. He was like, dude, best investment I ever made. You know what I mean? So, like, we're going to talk you off ledges. We're going to give you trade advice. I can't tell you how many DMs I had today, Snoog, because people are really trying to get in there and just try to figure things out. So make sure you guys hit that subscribe button on YouTube. Make sure you guys sign up for that Discord. We're sitting there right at that 400 mark, and we're excited to have you guys in there. Everybody that does it absolutely loves it. So thanks again for tuning in, and enjoy the process. Boom.